Thanks for joining me for another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to get into airbrushing the cheapest possible way. So in order to get into airbrushing, you're going to need a compressor. This can be one of the most expensive parts of your setup, depending on which way you go. If you go for something like the Iwata, say the IS975, which is kind of their top of the line silent compressor. When I say silent, it still makes a little bit of a noise, but it's not much louder than your regular fridge at home. This unit is great because it's got a 2-litre tank, it's got dual connectors where you can adjust the pressure so you can run 2 airbrushes at a different pressure at the same time, and it has enough capacity to do all of those things. You can even run a small HVLP mini spray gun off it as well. The only downside is it is expensive. But if you want to learn more about that particular compressor, I'll pop a link in the description below to a video showcasing that particular unit. So the other cheaper alternative would be to go for some sort of a general compressor that you find in a hardware store. They come in a multitude of different size tanks and power. So depending on what you're after, you can also then use them for power tools as well as obviously your airbrush. In order to use them for an airbrush, you will need to run a regulator, and I recommend that it's got a moisture trap on it. Even if you do have one on the unit, I always recommend that you run another one on the bench closest to where you're airbrushing to stop any moisture or contaminants coming into your line, because that could potentially ruin your artwork if you do have any sort of moisture or even oil coming through those lines. These compressors are a lot easier to come by and they are cheaper, so you can definitely set yourself up. The only drawback with those is that they are noisy, as opposed to something like I mentioned earlier, the Iwata, which is a lot more silent. So depending on if you can set the compressor up in a space where it's not going to bother you, well then that's fine. I recommend even to my students to then go for something like that, especially if they've already got one, and then spend a little bit more on the airbrush. Or if you're in an apartment and your neighbours are close by, then you might want to think about investing in a compressor similar to the Iwata, or there's plenty of other different brands. I'm just talking about that one because that's the one I use in my classes. There is, however, another option, which is this one here, which is a fantastic way if you just want to get into airbrushing. This is a battery powered airbrush. You can see I press down for air and it kicks in. You can see the little battery indicator there. This unit will run about an hour and 20 minutes. So plenty of time to do basic sort of airbrushing. Let's say if you're predominantly going to be airbrushing miniatures, you might do some sort of face or body art, special effects makeup, RC models, or you're doing cake decorating, then a unit like this will definitely do that job. No problem at all. I've got a heap of videos talking about this particular unit, and I'll link them up in the description below as well. But something like this, because it comes with the battery compressor, you're ready to rock, and you know that's all you need to buy, and they're relatively cheap. This one comes with this particular airbrush, but you can unscrew the airbrush and hook up some other models as well. I have tested them with some Iwata guns and they do work, so you could potentially just grab one of these as well. I believe they're for sale separately. So to give you a quick demo of how this one performs, you can still get a reasonable broad spray even though it's only at about 18 to 20 psi, and then you can also come in to do your finer detailing as well. So it gives you a nice range, and the beauty of it is that's all you need to get started. So you can definitely hear the difference when that compressor is running and then shuts off. But now that the tank is fully pumped up, I'm going to get about half an hour's worth of spray before it kicks back in. So that's a good thing about the workshop compressors, and if you buy a larger one. The other thing is I've got it hooked up to my Iwata HPCS Eclipse, and you can feel the pressure is, you know, nice and consistent. Not saying that the battery one can't handle that. It definitely still pumps out a consistent spray. You don't have any issues with it spattering or anything like that. But the pressure here is about 30 psi. You see I can get really quick coverage, up nice and close to do fine detail. And further away to do your shading or get a bit more coverage. Okay, so the unit that I'm going to test now is the IS975. This is the MB, the one in the case. It runs the same specs as the IS975 that I spoke about earlier. So the noise that it produces is virtually the same. So I'm going to switch it on now. So you can hear that's the maximum noise that you're going to get out of the unit. I've already got pressure coming out, but I'm going to wait, let that pump up, so you'll see what happens when the 2-litre tank fills up. Much like the workshop compressor, as soon as it gets full, it shuts itself off. So most of that noise is actually coming from the vibration from the case. So now it's shut off. I can go and paint, and you'll see it'll kick back in a minute. But it gives you a continuous flow. So you can see it's still holding enough air. Now it's kicked back in. But like I said, most of that noise, so the IS975 is probably a little quieter than that, because most of that noise is coming from the vibration of the case that it's in. But no problem with airbrushing with this unit at all, and silent enough compared to that workshop compressor. But obviously you are going to be paying for it. The other benefit with the Iwata compressors is they're oil free, so they don't have to stand upright. So I use this one in the case to go traveling to shows, and you can easily sit it flat in a vehicle to transport it and not be worried about stuffing up the motor. But definitely a handy little unit. So there you have it. Spoke about a few of the different options. Just as a quick recap, it really depends on what you want to do with the airbrush, like I mentioned earlier. Look, the cheapest way to get into it with an airbrush and this battery unit would be to go for something like this. This will get you going, and then if you do like airbrushing, then it's your choice whether you want to go and get yourself a workshop compressor if noise isn't an issue, or you can go for something more silent like the Iwata range. And there's lots of different models as well. You do not have to go for the ones that I spoke about here. Again, check out all the videos in the description below. They'll definitely help you out. If you have an airbrush related question that you need answered, then by all means leave that in the comments below. So I hope you found this video helpful. To continue your learning, be sure to check out some of the other videos and playlists that I've got listed here. And until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and I'll see you again very, very soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.